Hello, everybody, and welcome to Atheist Sunday School, your one-stop shop for everything Atheist Sunday and school. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today we are covering Mark chapters 10 through 13
with Landon Noll.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone, latitude, and biblical scholarship status. And hopefully you're here to get some more information regarding the Bible that perhaps in your previous Sunday school you never were taught.
Yeah, we do have a lot of that, actually.
Yes. And you know what else we have a lot of?
What's that?
Books.
We do.
I have the King James Version of the Bible.
I have the English Standard Version of the Bible.
Landon?
I have the New American Standard Bible, a reference edition by the A.J. Holman Company, division of J.P. Lipcott Company, Philadelphia, New York. I was going to say copyright God, but it appears that the Lockman Foundation between 1960 and 1972 usurped God's copyright. So,
wow,
beautiful.
But all rights are reserved. So I'm, but I believe this is kind of comes under the notion of fair use.
Well, this is what happens when you don't renew your copyright for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
In addition to that, I have the NIV Study Bible.
We have from Adela Yarbo Collins, commentary on Mark from the Hermenius series. We have a textual guide to the Greek New Testament
and a Greek New Testament.
And a Greek New Testament. Yes, we do.
We also have the Jewish Annotated New Testament and Eerdman's commentary on the Bible. We similarly have the text of the New Testament by Bruce Metzger and the Historical Jesus in Context by Dale Allison, Amy Jill Levine, and John Dominic Crossan. Neither of which we've used yet.
No, not on the show, but they're here. They are here.
And we have the New King James.
Yeah, so we got a good amount of books here.
Yeah, we do. Now,
yeah.
If you're not tuning into our Friday Apocryphal podcast, first of all, what's wrong with you? But second of all, we're covering the Apocalypse of Adam.
Yeah, so
a Gnostic text.
And Adam and Eve begin as one hermaphroditic being that is split into two.
By the demiurge.
Yep.
But the ones who were from a different aeon are also there. So we'll see if any aeons come through in this New Testament stuff we're covering today.
Yeah. So this next, this section that we're reading, that we're starting off with, before we hop into it. So it is about divorce. Yeah, right? Divorce.
Wonderful.
So customs regarding marriage and divorce were generally similar among ancient Greeks and Romans. A woman's family of origin provided her with a dowry when she married. While she was married, her husband administered this property. In case of divorce, the woman and the dowry returned to her family of origin. Although marriage was a legal and social contract before families, marital affection was considered essential to a true marriage, so much so that its cessation was cause for divorce. Divorce was common in all Mediterranean societies and apparently bore no social stigma. Men initiated divorce more commonly than women, but women also had the right to do so, often through the intervention of a male relative for the purpose of protecting her honor or that of the family of origin. The two main causes of divorce were, of course, adultery and infertility. Many men and women married two or more times, but the univira, I'm guessing that's a Latin thing, a woman married to only one husband and lifelong marital fidelity were praised, at least in funerary monuments. So that is interesting there. So we're going to get into it a bit more here, but it seems like there is a little bit of a philosophical difference on divorce between the ancient world and Jesus here.
Yes.
So we can probably hop into it whenever.
Probably. Not definitely.
I think, in fact, we probably have a really good chance to do so.
Really?
Now,
really?
There is quality podcasting.
Well, You said we can probably jump into it whenever. You didn't say right
All
now.
right, let's jump into it.
Okay, so chapter 10 of Mark. And he arose from thence and cometh into the coasts of Judea by the further side of Jordan. And the people resort unto him again. And as he was wont, he taught them again. And the Pharisees came to him and asked him, Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife? Tempting him.
Right, okay.
Is that authentic Pharisee accent? Or
I think it might be. Yeah, I think it might be.
you might. I always envision them being more sniveling.
Yeah, they seem like the sniveling type, at least according to Mark and Matthew so far. They seem like real dicks, so Jesus doesn't like them. Initially here, so the reading and beyond the Jordan is the one that is taken up by the Greek here. So the difficulty of this verse is clearly stated by Hooker. Quote, Jesus begins the journey toward the south, which will eventually bring him to Jerusalem, but his route is obscure. Many Jews crossed the Jordan into Perea in order to avoid Samaria, but the statement that he came into the districts of Judea and the far side of Jordan, or Perea, reverses the natural order, and early copyists were obviously puzzled. The reading dia tu peran tu to Iordanu through the region of the Jordan, followed by the Textus Receptus, in agreement with several uncials and minuscules, is a correction by a copyist who was puzzled by the geographical difficulties in the earlier readings. The Alexandrian text reads Kai Peran, or just the region, and the Western and Antiochian texts read Peran, so a region. The reading Peran has good widespread manuscript support, but it is possible that Kai, which just means and, may have been omitted in order to make the text agree with the parallel in Matthew 19:1. In order to indicate uncertainty regarding the original text, Kai is put in brackets here. The exact meanings of these different readings is uncertain. According to the reading in the text, into the region of Judea and beyond the Jordan, Jesus may have gone first from Galilee to Judea, and then after arriving in Judea, he went across to Perea, the Transjordan, on the east side of the Jordan River. If we compare the NIV, Jesus then left that place and went into the region of Judea and across the Jordan. But the reading in the text may also be understood to mean that at some time during his trip from Galilee, Jesus crossed to Perea on the east side of the Jordan River and entered Judah from the east side of the river. That is, it is not clear whether Jesus passed through Perea on his way to Judea or whether he went to Perea after he arrived in Judea.
All right. Well, there's
So are you implying that there was a copy editor that was looking at the text and fixing timelines to try to rationalize?
Yes. Yes, I am.
So let me give you some context to the current version of the book that we're reading. So the region of Judea, this is the Greek and Roman equivalent of the Old Testament land of Judah, essentially the southern part of the Holy Land, now exclusive of Idumea, which formerly had been the southern kingdom. For Jesus' ministry in Judea, this is something that'll come up more in Luke. For the Jordan, Jesus' journey took him south from Capernaum, over the mountains of Samaria, into Judea, and then east across the Jordan into Perea, where he was in the territory of Herod Antipas. Now, also for these Pharisees who are questioning him about divorce, the question of the Pharisees is hostile. It was for unlawful divorce and remarriage that John the Baptist denounced Herod Antipas. Now they're in Herod Antipas's territory. Mm-hmm. And Herodias. and announced Herod Antipas and this rebuke cost him first imprisonment and then his life. Jesus is now within Herod's jurisdiction, and the Pharisees may have hoped that Jesus' reply would cause the tetrarch to seize him as he had John.
Yeah, so it's asking him like, "Hey, is it okay to divorce your wife?" So it is really weird in the cultural context because it wasn't, there's no evidence that was ever like looked down upon by any group, even any Jewish one. So the artificiality of this introduction to the dialogue may indicate either that the evangelist needed to create a setting for a saying attributed to Jesus, or that the whole dialogue has its social setting in the early church. Matthew rewrote the question, making it more intelligible. His Pharisees ask whether a man is permitted to divorce his wife for any reason. Okay.
So let's continue on to verse 3. And he answered and said unto them, What did Moses command you? And they said, Moses suffered to write a bill of divorcement and put her away.
This is so bad. It's so bad.
And Jesus answered and said unto them, For the hardness of your heart he wrote you this precept. But from the beginning of the creation, God made them male and female, not according to the apocalypse of Adam.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We learned better from the apocalypse of Adam.
Like, these guys are not in the know. Jesus was not a Gnostic.
Right.
He did not know.
He didn't.
For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. So then they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder.
I want to point out this is not an admonition against fission of nuclei. This is a property related thing.
Right. Right. Interesting.
Oh man, I was definitely going to interpret it as nuclei.
Well, here it's like the exact opposite of what we covered in the Apocalypse of Adam.
Yeah.
Right. And in the house his disciples asked him again of the same matter, and he saith unto them, Whosoever shall put away his wife and marry another committeth adultery against her. And if a woman shall put away her husband and be married to another, she committeth adultery.
Apparently. But yeah, as argued above, no Jewish group in the 1st century CE forbade divorce. The teaching of the Markan Jesus is thus distinctive. The criterion of dissimilarity could be applied to conclude that the historical Jesus did in fact forbid divorce. Another possibility is that the dialogue arose in some of the communities of followers of Jesus after his death in response to a tendency towards sexual continence. The wish to divorce may have been connected with the ideal of sexual self-mastery. Paul's reiteration in 1 Corinthians 7:10 of the commandment of Jesus against divorce occurs in a context in which he is attempting to limit the desire of at least some of the Corinthians to put into practice the maxim, it is good for a man not to touch a woman.
Yeah, so in addition to that, his announcement of a man doing this, committing adultery, a simple declaration of divorce on the part of a husband could not release him from the divine law of marriage and its moral obligations. This enduring force of the marriage was unrecognized in rabbinic courts, but see note on Matthew 19:3 and 19:9, where an exception is mentioned. 1 Corinthians 7:15 may also contain another exception. And as for the woman committing adultery, in this historical and geographical context, Jesus' pronouncements confirm the bold denunciation by John the Baptist, and equally condemn Herod Antipas and Herodias. Yeah. But there's more in the Jewish annotated version here. The commandment the commandment which allows divorce in Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 4, is given because of hardness of heart. Can you pull that up? Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 4.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. While I read, Mark insists that the prohibition of divorce goes back to creation, a legal move not unlike Paul's argument.
So it is a little long here. So when a man takes a wife and marries her, if then she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some indecency in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house, and she departs out of his house, and if she goes and becomes another man's wife, and the latter man hates her and writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house, or if the latter man dies, who took her to be his wife, then her former husband, who sent her away, may not take her again to be his wife after she has been defiled, for that is an abomination before the Lord. And you shall not bring sin upon the land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance. So you can't remarry after you've been married again.
Right, because that is showing that you're not taking it seriously.
Defiled.
Yeah. But also here, the prohibition of divorce appears in other New Testament texts in Matthew and in 1 Corinthians, and likely derives from Jesus. Claims that it was introduced to protect women from being abandoned are not supported by any of these texts. The Qumran sect also prohibited divorce with the same scriptural argument. Marriage was ordained at creation. Among Jesus' followers, the prohibition of divorce might have addressed those who were separating for celibacy. Biblical law allowed only men to initiate divorce, but in this period, Jewish women, in accordance with Roman law, also initiated divorce, as Mark and Paul indicate.
Great.
And they brought young children to him that he should teach them, or touch them. They want him to touch young children. And his disciples rebuked those that brought them. But when Jesus saw it, he was much displeased and said unto them, Suffer the little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, for of such is the kingdom of God. Verily I say unto you, whosoever shall not receive the kingdom of God as a little child, he shall not enter therein. Wow, so I guess the Catholic Church has taken this one to heart.
Yikes. Yeah, and a number of other things. Of course, this is one of the, there's a lot of underlining verses here, but this is one of the things I underline in my Bible as a kid. So I guess these are big things because entering the kingdom of God apparently is important.
So, on this whole thing, so you might think initially, like, because every time they use the word touch, usually it is associated with healing, right? But in this case, it isn't. And it's the only instance in Mark in which this verb is used in a context other than healing. As argued before, the belief was current in the cultural context of Mark that some quality of charismatic person could be transferred by touch. The pre-Markan miracle stories and the Markan summaries in which Jesus' touch figures prominently presuppose that his healing power can be transferred to those desirous of being healed. Such ideas seem to be presupposed in this pre-Markan text as well.
Like, the point here is that the point of the comparison is the usual openness and receptivity of children. The kingdom of God must be received as a gift. It cannot be achieved by human effort. It may be entered only by those who know they are helpless without claim or merit. Which I don't know if the author of Mark ever met a child.
Oh, yeah.
They tend to be kind of narcissistic, actually.
They do, yes.
Anyways, and he took them up in his arms, put his hands upon them, and blessed them. And when he was gone forth into the way, there came one running and kneeled to him, and asked him, "Good master, what shall I do that I may inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said unto him, "Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is God. Thou knowest the commandments: do not commit adultery, do not kill, do not steal, do not bear false witness, defraud not, honor thy father and mother." Yep.
So it's interesting. This verse 18. I'm curious about the apologetics of it, because some people who argued about Christology and whether or not Christ was really God or was a godlike figure or a person or a prophet, so forth. They argue about that particular verse 18.
So the apologetic that's given in the study Bible here is that Jesus was not denying his own goodness or godness, but was forcing the person to recognize that his only hope was in total reliance on God, who alone can give eternal life. He may also have been encouraging the young man to consider the full identity and nature of the one he was addressing.
So that would be the apologetic, right? Mm-hmm. So this statement reflects the typical summons in the Psalms, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, and Ezra to give thanks to God because God is good. The goodness of God is associated in these passages with God's steadfast love for Israel. So just a little bit more here on this. So Philo explains that God did not include any penalties in the Ten Commandments because he was God, and this is a quotation here. He was God, and it follows at once that as the Lord, he was good, the cause of good only, and of nothing ill. According to the tractate Berakot, blessings in the Mishnah, in thanksgiving for rain and good news, one should say, "Blessed is he, the good and the doer of good." It is rare, but not unheard of, for a rabbi to be called good. Israel Abrahams, following Gustav Dahlmann, cited a case in which a rabbi heard the following in a dream. Quote, "Good greeting to the good teacher from the good Lord, who of his goodness doeth good to his people."
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Horrible.
Isn't it? Moses is also called good. So, yeah, it looks like that is... Yeah, that's in the Mishnah, it seems.
Now, let me point out here that this reply that Jesus gives to the kid, it contains 6 commandments, one of which is not in the 10 Commandments, but maybe alluding to the 10 Commandments. That's on defrauding. Mm-hmm. That may have to do with covetousness. But the point is, according to the Jewish annotated New Testament, that his reply is based on the Torah, that the young man has known all of his life, and that the kid does not need a new teaching. He already has his teaching. So, again here, like in Matthew, the mark in Jesus is very much telling people to follow the commandments of the Torah, which we do not see represented in modern Christianity at all, really. I mean, maybe they read some Old Testament stuff sometimes, but they're not telling people like the kosher laws or anything like that. So let's continue on. And he answered and said unto him, Master, all these have I observed from my youth. Then Jesus, beholding him,
yes.
Yeah. Beholding him, loved him, and said unto him, One thing thou lackest. Go thy way, sell whatsoever thou hast, and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven. And come, take up the cross and follow me.
Yeah, taking up the cross, very common thing here. So this is, of course, following his teachings and whatnot. Although taking up the cross started to mean something very different in the medieval period. Like if we're talking about like the crusading era, taking up the cross meant becoming a crusader.
Right. Now, in here, he tells him to sell all of his possessions. Giving all of one's possessions away is not commended in rabbinic tradition, since that would put one's family at risk.
Yeah. So like with rabbinic tradition, like you should you should give to the poor and stuff like that.
Right.
But they wouldn't want you to put yourself at risk of anything bad.
Yeah, if you're single, is that okay to do that, or you don't want to become poor that people have to support you? Is that the
Right. Well,
put yourself at risk too.
If you give to the poor to the point where you become poor, you're just increasing the burden on others, right? Anyways.
Now, it should be noted that the text doesn't say to take up the cross. It says, so you lack one thing, go sell what you possess and give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me.
Yeah, this does appear in the NIV, and it also appears in the Jewish annotated version.
Yeah,
Mine says take up the cross.
I'm sure it does.
Because the KJV is the best version.
Mm-hmm, of course.
Just more evidence of that.
best at what though? I keep asking.
It's just the best in general.
It's the best at being that language thing. It's the best collection of thous and these and thys.
So here's
King James version. People wouldn't say things like ye old and thou and so forth because they wouldn't think it'd be very biblical.
Right.
Yeah. So I would. Here's a textual note on this. So the Textus Receptus, which is the basis for the KJV, in agreement with many minuscules, adds aras ton strauron, take up the cross, from 834. The shorter text has strong manuscript support. Furthermore, the absence of the words aras ton stauron is in the parallel accounts in Matthew 19:21 and Luke 18:22 suggest that these words were not originally part of the text of Mark.
Yes. All right. This is a long chapter, and we're like less than halfway through. So, and he was sad at that saying and went away grieved, for he had great possessions. And Jesus looked around about and saith unto his disciples, how hardly shall they that have riches enter into the kingdom of God? And the disciples were astonished at his words. But Jesus answereth again, and saith unto them, children, how hard it is for them that trust in riches to enter into the kingdom of God. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. Now, as in Matthew, this saying pops up, and it does not refer to a gate in Jerusalem. There's no evidence of that. And they were astonished out of measure, saying among themselves, who then can be saved? And Jesus, looking upon them, saith, with men it is impossible, but not with God, for with God all things are possible. Then Peter began to say unto him, lo, we have left all and have followed thee. And Jesus answered and said, verily I say unto you, there is no man that hath left house or brethren or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or lands for my sake and the gospel's, but he shall receive 100-fold now in this time, houses and brethren and sisters and mothers and children and lands, with persecutions, and in the world to come eternal life. But many that are first shall be last, and the last first.
And
isn't that nice?
I think we saw that last verse. That was also in Matthew, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think it pops up in some Johnny Cash lyrics too.
That would make sense. And we did cover it in that episode, so I don't think there's a
Johnny Cash lyrics.
No, not. Yes, Johnny Cash lyrics.
Wonderful.
We did a whole Atheist Sunday School about Johnny Cash lyrics.
I don't remember this.
You gotta dig real deep to find it, but we did it.
That's actually a good idea. We could do that. It'd be like doing Psalms again, but like it'd be better.
Maybe we should do it on like April Fools or something.
Yeah, if it falls on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does it? I don't know. Let's check.
I don't know. Go find out.
All right.
And they were in the way going up to Jerusalem, and Jesus went before them, and they were amazed. And as they followed, they were afraid. And he took again the 12 and began to tell them what things should happen unto him, saying, Behold!
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 Beautiful.
We go up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man shall be delivered unto the chief priests and unto the scribes, and they shall condemn him to death, and shall deliver him to the Gentiles. And they shall mock him, and shall scourge him, and shall spit upon him, and shall kill him, and the third day he shall rise again. So this is Passion narrative, right? Third Passion prediction.
Oh, man. Okay, so I'm not going to cover it right now because it's honestly not like super important to this. But there's an excursus in here about the secret gospel of Mark.
What?
So the secret gospel of Mark. Okay, so I'm going to tell you it's a short story about it. So there's this guy Morton Smith. Okay, and it is believed that he forged a document called the secret gospel of Mark, and it would have been done.
Smiths doing that.
Yeah, right. So it would be in like the 1940s. Yeah. So it was the secret gospel of Mark, and it took a while before people realized that this probably isn't real. It was just this guy. He is the only source for this information. And yeah. So it's we should read that one of these days on
the Friday Apocryphal podcast.
Yeah, we should. I think it'd be really interesting to go over it.
Does it contain hidden gnosis?
Probably.
Wow. Cool. And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came unto him, saying, Master, we would that thou shouldst do for us whatsoever we shall desire. And he said unto... Yeah, of course you would. And he said unto them, What would ye that I should do for you? They said unto him, Grant unto us that we may sit one on thy right hand and the other on thy left hand in thy glory. But Jesus said unto them, Ye know not what ye ask. Can ye drink of the cup that I drink of, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? And they said unto him, We can. And Jesus said unto them, Ye shall indeed drink of the cup that I drink of, and with the baptism that I am baptized, withal shall ye be baptized. But to sit on my right hand and on my left hand is not mine to give, but it shall be given to them for whom it is prepared. Okay. Obviously, this is referring to the crucifixion scene, which is going to come up.
Right. So here, baptism is used metaphorically and refers neither to the baptism of John nor to Christian baptism. The term baptism is also used metaphorically in Mark 10:38, since the words baptizein, to immerse, and baptismos, immersion or baptism, were used in Mark 7:4 for Levitical washings. These or the baptism of John may provide the literal level of the metaphor here. The Levitical washings aim at the restoration of purity, whereas the baptism of John was concerned with the repentance and the forgiveness of sins. The notion of a baptism for the forgiveness of sins would fit the context here well. It is analogous to the idea of Jesus' drinking the cup of the wrath of God. In both cases, it is presupposed that Jesus' death is vicarious. This understanding becomes explicit in verse 45.
And when the 10 heard it, they began to be much displeased with James and John. But Jesus called them to him, and saith unto them, Ye know that they which are accounted to rule over the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and their great ones exercise authority upon them. But so shall it not be among you. But whosoever will be great among you shall be your minister. And whosoever of you will be the chiefest shall be servant of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister, and to give his life a ransom for many. Now, this reminds me of something that we covered last time. Let me just see if I can find it.
Yeah, so the use of the epithet Son of Man for Jesus here in relation to his death is analogous to, if not dependent on, the usage of that designation in the Markan Passion predictions.
Right, this is something that pops up in chapter 9 as well. If any man desire to be first, the same shall be last of all.
Yeah. And we had that with Matthew as well. We have that inversion of roles.
Right. And they came to Jericho. And as he went out of Jericho with his disciples and a great number of people, blind Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, sat by the highway side begging.
Yes.
And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. And many charged him that he should hold his peace.
Oh, damn.
But he cried the more a great deal, Thou son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stood still and commanded him to be called. And they call the blind man, saying unto him, Be of good comfort, rise, he calleth thee. And he, casting away his garment, rose and came to Jesus. And Jesus answered and said unto him, What will...
Just as he cast away his garment, it means he basically was naked, or what's the implication there?
So, with the translation here, he then threw off his cloak, jumped up, and went to Jesus. So that is what verse 50 looks like? All right. Well, it you know what? It might be that he's naked. Who knows? Well, I mean, the cloak would be, it would be like one of very few possessions that a beggar would have. This is the whole, like, is this supposed to be related to the whole, like, giving up everything you have kind of thing? Is it supposed to go along with that? His leaving it behind is thus analogous to the widow who contributed, quote, her whole livelihood to the service of God in the temple. Okay, so I think it is kind of related to that. That would make sense. But yes.
I also want to point out that this is Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus. Timaeus is one of Plato's dialogues, mostly in the form of a long monologue given by the title character Timaeus of Locri, written in circa 360 BC. The work puts forward speculation on the nature of the physical world and human beings and is followed by the dialogue Critias. So basically, Timaeus makes a distinction between the physical world and the eternal world. The eternal world's one that never changes at all. It's only apprehended by reason. Timaeus suggests that since nothing becomes or changes without cause, then the cause of the universe must be a demiurge or a god, a figure Timaeus refers to as the father and maker of the universe. And since the universe is fair, the demiurge must have looked into the eternal model to make it, and not to the perishable one. Hence, using the eternal and perfect world of forms or ideals as a template, he set about creating our world, which formerly only existed in a state of disorder. So there are some limited parallels.
Yeah, so it's impossible to determine whether Mark intended to allude to Plato's Timaeus, but it is likely that the name would have brought that text to mind for those in the audience familiar with it.
Right. Very coincidental if he didn't intend to refer to it.
Sure. Like, I don't think so names that were like Timaeus, you have like Timaeus, Timothy, names of that sort. They don't seem to be too uncommon in the ancient world.
Right.
So it is not clear whether it is originally Semitic or an originally Greek name. If it were a Greek name, then the inclusion of the Aramaicizing form Baptimaeus, so Bartimaeus or son of Timaeus, would be odd. The common Greek name Timaeus is accented on the first syllable, Timaeus, or Timaeus, I guess it would be pronounced Timaeus. The genitive Timaeoi in Mark could be, so of Timaeus, could be derived either from the nominative Timaeus or Timaeus. And the only difference there is where the accent is. So you have either Timaeus or Timaeus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just thought that it was, given that Plato's Timaeus is kind of speculating on like godly matters. And I mean, it surely would have been around by the time
Absolutely.
that they wrote this.
Yeah.
And probably educated people would have some familiarity.
Yeah, but you'd have to think that, like, who would Jesus have been talking to primarily? Like, aside from the Pharisees, it would have been mostly non-educated people.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, but...
Like, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have known it necessarily.
I mean, this is presuming that there is little education in general that they get, which, I mean, that is a fair assumption, but we don't really get a description of a lot of the people who Jesus preaches to, especially, like, there are people who he runs into who... ask him to do things, who are Gentiles.
Yeah.
And some of them hold higher positions. Like there was that one leader, that centurion, right?
Yeah.
He probably had some kind of education, right?
Probably, yeah.
But we can't be sure for individuals, right?
Absolutely.
Anyways, I only got 2 verses left here. And Jesus answered and said unto him, What wilt thou that I should do unto thee? The blind man said unto him, Lord, that I might receive my sight. And Jesus said unto him, Go thy way, thy faith hath made thee whole. And immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus in the way. Which is strange because last time Jesus had to spit in a guy's face and rub it into his eyeballs. Right?
That is...
Here is just... So that shows that Jesus is perfectly capable of not doing the Dom stuff, but he just wanted to in those previous instances.
Yeah. That's pretty funny.
Now you might ask, well, why doesn't he want to just then make all the blind people of the region sight? You say, well, I guess because they have to prove that they're worthy of a miracle.
They have to prove that they want the miracle.
And that they believe he can do it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise he won't just do it, right? Because
exactly.
You got to show God that, gee, I'd like this for God to do the right thing, right? If you don't placate,
and even then,
I guess that's the message.
Even then, God's plan.
Yeah,
God has a plan.
It's hard to figure because on the one hand, Jesus is clearly doing these miracles, right? But when he presents it in this way, it's basically that he outright says, "Thy faith hath made thee whole," right? It's not, "I have healed you."
Oh yeah. Right? It was by your faith that you were able to be healed, I guess.
Yeah. So it's not that really Jesus is doing this.
It's faith healing.
It's that the blind man did this on his own. It's just by expressing his faith in this certain way that he was capable of doing that on his own. Right?
Yeah, so that would bring a much more literal sense to Jesus being the way.
Right.
I remember in our church there was a gentleman who was had polio as a child and was essentially paraplegic, and so there was this subgroup of people who said, well, the reason why he's still paralyzed is he doesn't have faith, right? God. If he was a true blah blah blah, then he'd ask God to heal him, and God would do that. And this kind of comes from this whole puritanical thing of saying, if you are well, healthy, wealthy, so forth, it's because God has smiled on you, and if you have problems, it's because you're a bad person.
That's really gross.
It really is a sick, disgusting process. Anyway. Such as, but this is dredging up my childhood memories of this kind of stuff. So
I'm sorry.
Speaking of memories, that chapter's now in our memories because we have finished it. And we are moving on to chapter 11. If you're enjoying the stream so far, give us a like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends, family, and neighbors, and the blind. I will return momentarily.
Whether or not they have faith or not, right? Either one.
Exactly, you got it. So this next section here, so the entry into Jerusalem. So the historicity of this passage has been doubted for several reasons. Really? Let's find out why. Those who believe it, like William Reed, that there was... those who believe, like William Reed, that there was nothing messianic about Jesus and his activities conclude that the story is part of the attempt to transfer the later belief that Jesus was the Messiah into the narrative of the events of his lifetime. Although Mark does not explicitly quote Zechariah 9, the narrative of Jesus' entry has several points of contact with that text. So some argue that the whole scene has been created as fulfillment of the older passage read as prophecy. Others infer from the accounts about messianic pretenders and prophetic leaders in Josephus's work that if the incident described here had actually occurred, the Romans would have intervened immediately. Okay, well, we'll see. So in the second half of the 12th century, many scholars disagreed with Reed and argued that Jesus was executed as a messianic pretender or a would-be king of the Jews. The Markan portrayal of Jesus's entry fits this charge and can explain why Jesus was so executed. If Zechariah 9 was known to the evangelists, it probably was. So it was probably known to Jesus as well. Jesus could well have arranged his entry so that it recalled Zechariah 9 for all those present. If verses 7 through 10 more or less accurately describe how Jesus entered Jerusalem, the Romans may not have acted immediately because Jesus and those hailing him did not take up arms or commit any acts of violence. Two of the messianic pretenders in the period following the death of Herod the Great, Simon and I'm going to butcher this name, Athrongus, engaged in violent activities against the Jewish ruling class and the Romans. Simon was beheaded by Gratus, a Roman officer. Athrongus and his brothers were caught and taken prisoner by Gratus and Ptolemy, a friend of Herod the Great. After the death of Jesus, while Fatus was procurator of Judea, a prophet named Theudas led a large number of people out to the Jordan River, promising that the river would be parted at his command. Although there is no evidence that this group was armed or committed violent acts, they took their possessions with them and thus were apparently well organized and had a purpose that could have been viewed by the Romans as rebellious. Fatus sent a squadron, 500 or 1,000 men, of cavalry after them, and Theudas was beheaded. In 56 CE, a prophet whom Josephus calls the Egyptian led a large crowd to the Mount of Olives and asserted that at his command the walls of Jerusalem would fall down. Josephus says that he intended to set himself up as a tyrant. This may be a pejorative paraphrase of a messianic claim and its acceptance by a large number of people. The procurator Felix attacked the Egyptian and his followers, killing 400 and taking 200 prisoners. In light of the accounts of these two prophetic figures, one could argue that Jesus' entry into Jerusalem did not lead to Roman intervention for one or more of the following reasons. The crowd hailing Jesus was not as large as those following Theudas and the Egyptian, or perhaps the crowd at Jesus' entry assembled spontaneously and was not an organized movement, or perhaps Pontius Pilate, as procurator, had a different way of responding to such an event than his successors had. It is clear that the story about the finding of the donkey, as it stands in Mark, has legendary and miraculous features. Furthermore, even if the rest of the story is based on historical memory, one cannot be certain that any one of its specific details is historically reliable. All right, so now going to talk about his entry.
Yeah, we're getting into the last real section of Mark.
I suppose, yeah. Yep. All right. Now, when they drew near to Jerusalem, to Bethphage and Bethany, at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent two of his disciples and said to them, "Go into the village in front of you, and immediately as you enter it, you will find a colt tied, on which no one has ever sat.
So
Untie it and bring it."
So let me tell you about something.
So this was, of course, with the Zechariah 9 section.
Zechariah 9, but also Zechariah 14, where the Mount of Olives is the site of the coming eschatological battle. Also, according to Josephus in the Antiquities of the Jews, a contemporary messianic figure, the so-called Egyptian prophet.
We just talked about that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
We just did.
I was gathering my bearings.
Yeah, of course you were.
All bearings.
Yeah, so, if anyone says to you, "Why are you doing this?" say, "The Lord has need of it, and will send it back here immediately." And they went away and found a colt tied at a door outside in the street, and they untied it.
They just stole this colt.
They did. And some of those standing there said to them, "What are you doing, untying the colt?" And they told them what Jesus had said, and they let them go. Wow. The heist of the century. And they brought the colt to Jesus and threw their cloaks on it, and he sat on it. And
Okay. Just imagine this like one of those heist movies, right? You have the scene, they're walking in, and you hear Jesus' voice. He's like, "You guys are going to go find a colt. It's going to be tied down to something." Then you see the colt, and it's like, "Untie it and bring it to me." And when they're untying it, and it's like, "And if anyone asks you what you're doing, you just tell them." And it's like someone's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And then you see like the apostle's mouth moving while you hear Jesus saying the words for him to say. Right?
Yeah, that's good stuff. I like it. I feel like we could definitely make that like a skit or something.
And you've got like some heisty background music going like do 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 do. Yeah. So
Cool.
Like the Mission Impossible music.
yeah.
I love it. I love it. I think we should actually make that.
It'd be pretty good, huh?
I love it.
I like that idea. You should, yeah.
We could totally do it.
You can do something like you can do that little video thing, and for Patreon, they can get early access. So that
True.
there you go.
That's right.
True.
Patron only.
And the video script.
And the video script, as if we didn't just kind of cover it, but you'd get that too.
You would get it in writing.
Yeah. So
As if it's not in the Bible already.
also yes. So yeah, they just let them go, and they brought the colt to Jesus and threw their cloaks on it, and he sat on it, and many spread their cloaks on the road.
Yeah, this is something that would happen for royalty.
Gotcha.
It's associated with the coronation of a king in Israel.
And many spread their cloaks on the road, and others spread leafy branches that they had cut from the fields. And branches that they had cut. Sorry, I just read that. And those who went before and those who followed were shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest.
Yeah, so Hosanna, it's save, we pray in Aramaic. Okay. The quotations from Psalm 118, 25 through 26, incorporated into the Hallel, sung at the pilgrimage festivals of Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, and other festive occasions.
And he entered Jerusalem and went into the temple. And when he had looked around at everything, as it was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. On the following day, when they came from Bethany, he was hungry. Was he really?
This is Monday of Passion Week.
Okay. And seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see if he could find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. And he said to it, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard it. Holy shit.
Yeah, this is
just an innocent tree.
Right. Now,
I remember this.
Let me tell you about the tree.
Tell us what
Fitty?
tree.
No. You're supposed to say what tree. And I say
What tree?
the tree with the power.
What tree with what power?
The power of voodoo.
I have no idea what this is in reference to.
No. Labyrinth.
Do you, Landon?
I don't know. I was just trying to go along and see where it went. but yeah,
I was trying to do the labyrinth thing where David Bowie's like, "You remind me of the Babe."
No, it's a thing where
I never saw Labyrinth.
You should see Labyrinth.
He never sees anything.
It wasn't the fig. It wasn't the fig season. So like, it's like, what are you getting mad at something which ostensibly, if these things were designed by God and created by God, and God probably knew the seasons and knew that this wasn't there. I mean, what's the big deal about getting mad at stuff? It's like,
well, there's a reason.
Saying, "Where's the water?" And you say, "Oh, there's no water." Well, then you're going to condemn to be dry, right?
Well, there's a reason, Landon. Now,
okay. Well, tell me. So I'm all ears.
Now, fig trees around Jerusalem normally begin to get leaves in March or April, but do not produce figs until their leaves are all out in June. This tree was an exception in that it was already at Passover time full of leaves. So
it should have had some fruit on it, I guess, right?
Well, it should neither have had figs nor leaves.
Gotcha.
But it has leaves. So it's out of season. It's not going on its proper course. Perhaps the incident is a parable of judgment with the fig tree representing Israel. A tree full of leaves normally should have fruit, but this one was cursed because it had none. The fact that the cleansing of the temple is sandwiched between two parts of the account of the fig tree, which we'll get into, may underscore the theme of judgment. But the point is that this tree is an abnormal tree. It's not doing what trees of its kind are supposed to do.
Got some interpretations here for you. So the interpretation offered above, that the lack of figs on the tree corresponds to the leader's failure to welcome Jesus, can explain the statement that, quote, "it was not the time for figs." The tension between Jesus' searching for figs and it not being the season for figs is analogous to the tension created by the account of his entry into Jerusalem. On the one hand, the disciples and the crowd acclaim Jesus as the Messiah. Therefore, according to convention and given the audience's assumption that he is the Messiah, the leaders of Jerusalem should have welcomed him. On the other hand, it was not yet the time for his enthronement as Messiah. He had not yet suffered, been raised, and been exalted as the Son of Man. In other words, it was not the time for his exercise of messiahship, yet the leaders are culpable for not recognizing his status as Messiah. The culpability of the leaders on the narrative level is expressed figuratively by Jesus' curse, so may no one eat fruit from you again. The implication is that their role as leaders is forfeit. This rhetorical point is similar to the force of the parable in chapter 12, which we will get to, about the murderous tenants. The owner of the vineyard, quote, will come and destroy the vine dresses and give the vineyards to others. The chief priests, the scribes and the elders recognized that Jesus had told the parable against them. The statement that his disciples heard what he said prepares for Peter's recognition that the tree had withered as a result of the curse. So it's going to wither. All right. So
why don't you continue on here?
We'll do.
But again, I think it's one of those things where, why didn't Jesus just say, "Oh, this tree is not providing miracle. Do your thing. Have it full of figs." So that not only could Jesus have enjoyed a fig, but the people around them could have appreciated the fig, and it could have fed other people, right? It could have been a miraculous thing as opposed to bad tree. I know it's the wrong season because I'm God and I created you, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to go like wither because I'm in a foul, pissy mood.
Well, he's got to make sure that it withers later. So
yeah, I guess.
He had to curse it. And they came to Jerusalem. And he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money chargers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them and saying to them, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." And the chief priests and the scribes heard it and were seeking a way to destroy him, for they feared him, because all the crowd was astonished at his teaching. And when evening came, they went out of the city. So he goes in to this place, and he, it's supposed to be a lordly temple, but instead there are a bunch of people buying and selling in it,
Yeah, why Jesus objects is not clear. Suggestions include: 1, he finds a violation of the sanctity of the temple. See for reference the Talmuds where... Okay. It's some specific reference. I'm not going to get into that. But 2, for all nations means an end to the exclusion of Gentiles. Or 3, he condemns the purported economic injustice of the Roman-appointed temple establishment in requiring money to be changed at the temple. But the text mentions none of these motivations. Fall of the first temple as a result of sin is mourned in some prophetic texts, e.g. Isaiah 64:11.
Now that I'm thinking of it, we could do like so many of these stories like in modern terms.
Yeah,
I was thinking of a stupid T-shirt idea with The Rock, but I forgot where.
With The Rock,
the Rock,
the People's Champ,
the Rock of Ages. I forgot the name. Where did all those names come from for the Rock of Ages? Where did we read that? Sorry, it's a total left ball.
The Rock of Ages. Are you thinking of
that thing that founded the church? It had like 20 nicknames. Everlasting Rock.
Are you thinking of the one in, was it Zechariah?
He's talking about that cornerstone that was pointed out in the Testament of Solomon.
Testament of Solomon. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'll look into it.
Now, I'll point out, by the way, this thing about the made in my house, a robber's den, and prayers so forth. This text was used by followers of Martin Luther to rationalize their objections to the Roman Catholic Church having indulgences and other things, that is, things you'd buy for religious favor and so forth, selling and buying of dispensations and all that sort of thing. And so they use this text as a justification for their Reformation type item. Never mind the fact that they ended up setting up an equivalent system for themselves, but that's just the way it goes. And people who preach prosperity gospel, this is a notion that if you are goodly and godly, this is the echoes from the puritanical folks of the past, right? That those people have specific rationalizations around this thing, some of which are actually quite objectionable. I mean, one of the things that some of the prosperity gospels in trying to, because prosperity gospel is like you give to the church and the Lord's going to give you 100-fold or 10-fold or 77-fold or whatever the thing is that they do back, right? You invest in the church, that is the preacher, and then God will bless you. And they point to this sort of text and they say, well, this isn't what it means to say. And some of them in particular go and say, well, the reason why Jesus was mad is because they were Jews defiling the temple and not Christians. And there's some very anti-Semitic things that come about it. So this is a fairly abused text by people having various causes in various ways, and it's kind of sad.
See, I think maybe it's because this is kind of because the temple now is being, instead of being used for worship of God, it's being used as more of like a public trade forum,
right?
And that is seen as like a corruption of it.
You mean so a church actually involved in a collection of money and on politics and local things? Are you suggesting that might happen?
Well, we pointed this out when we were doing Matthew, that there's no way for these people to be sure that the animals that they purchase from these people actually are fit for ritual sacrifice.
Sure.
And God does not like it. We've read many times that he is not a fan of having these animals that do not meet the requirements for sacrifice to be used as sacrificial animals. And if you're buying from a merchant, then you have no guarantee that this calf is exactly 1 year of age.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't know if it's like one taken from the best stock of that merchant's like availability, right? So really it's like, well, people are purchasing these animals. Maybe they're just purchasing bad animals. Maybe they're offending Yahweh, right?
Sure.
So generally it's unsafe.
All right. Either way, as they passed by in the morning, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. And Peter remembered and said to him, Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you curse has withered. And Jesus answered them, have faith in God. Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. And whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father also, who is in heaven, may forgive you in your trespasses.
Lawrence,
Mm-hmm.
do you think Jesus read The Secret?
Do I think he read The Secret?
Yeah, do you think Jesus read The Secret? You know, The Secret?
The book.
The book? The Secret?
I've also never read it.
You've
Never even heard of it.
No.
You've never heard of The Secret?
No.
Okay. So
I am so out of this.
Wow.
All these references to cultural things, got nothing for you.
So this was a very, very big thing.
Okay.
So the New Age crowd has this position where it's like The Secret, right? And The Secret is that you just got to believe in something and then it'll happen, right? So if you believe that you're going to get $1 million hard enough, then somehow you'll get $1 million. Now, it's not guaranteed exactly what way you will.
Yeah, you won't like it. It's like a monkey paw thing. It sucks. Don't do it.
Yeah. But like, if you believe that you're going to be a PhD religious studies, you're going to be a PhD religious studies if you believe hard enough, right? All that's necessary is the intensity of your belief, right? This is The Secret.
Gotcha. It's not
Millions of people are aware of this.
And so if something is going wrong,
I've heard that like
it's
philosophy
because
before.
you don't believe it enough, right? and that all things are possible. So if you are trying to you're trying to, let's say, prove something mathematically that's false true, and you're not succeeding, you just have to believe hard enough, and then reality will bend to your will.
Right? Like those mathematicians who say that 2 + 2 = 5. They're out there.
Well, it does for certain values of 2 and 5.
Yes.
Yeah, you got to consider that.
If you want me to give you an axiomatic system where 2 + 2 = 5,
no, we know.
It's not very useful.
See, I kind of want this, but maybe later, not now.
Tracing a triangle over a sphere.
But
One-dimensional triangle.
A one-dimensional triangle?
2-dimensional. It has to be
somehow
2-dimensional.
this impersonal universe will give you something if you want it bad enough. I get the point that if you want to do something, part of your ability to get it done is your effort and your desire to do so. So I get that part, but the notion that the universe owes that to you is a different story. So yes, I think having the desire and putting in the effort to try to achieve something is certainly part of success, but it doesn't mean that your lack of success is because of lack of faith.
Right.
Well, it could just be that you're not keyed in enough to the secret.
Oh, right. See, or we could just be,
the more obscure the secret, the more prosperous its hidden knowledge.
Oh my God. Okay. That crazy bitch. All right. So, Blavatsky, crazy stuff. All right. Let's right. So, whatever. If you wish hard enough, you get a thing. So,
right.
And they came again to Jerusalem, and as he was walking in the temple, the chief priests and the scribes and the elders came to him, and they said to him, "By what authority are you doing these things, or who gave you this authority to do them?" Jesus said to them, "I will ask one question. Answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I do these things. Was the baptism of John from heaven or from man? Answer me." And they discussed it with one another, saying, "If we say from heaven, he will say, 'Why then did you not believe him?' But shall we say from man?" They were afraid of the people, for they all held that John was a prophet. So they answered Jesus, "We do not know." And Jesus said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things." Okay, wow. Well, that's like the biggest question dodge.
Yeah. He's like, "You want to ask me a hard question? I'll ask you a hard question." Ha!
You don't know the answer to that? Well, in that case, I'm not telling you. Okay. Whatever, Jesus.
What's the 653rd digit of pi?
Landon?
In base pi, it's 0.
Oh.
Thanks. That's a nice cop out too. Good retort.
Good one of those things, heresy thing. But yes,
man, that's
we
good.
should use base pi.
Should we? I don't know if we should.
I think it would be hilarious.
We could give it a shot.
We would take a whole lot of utility out of doing anything with numbers, but it would be funny.
It would be funny. That is true.
Very, 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 very pi, but yes, very pious.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Ooh, we should start a church of piety. And
meanwhile, back in the Bible.
And back into the Bible, we are actually at chapter 12 now.
Yeah, and do you hear something? I hear something.
Do hear something.
I think I hear something.
It's scary. I've never heard it before.
Behold, I am your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and I want to let all you heathens and sinners know that I support this wonderful episode of Atheist Sunday School. Lawrence and Reuben try their very best to bring you the true glory of the Bible, and they need your help. They have provided links to their Patreon page and other social media just for you. Once again, my name is Jesus Christ, and this is Milwaukee Atheists. The Lord is with them. God bless.
Strewn out between different parts. Back. And the reason that the Church of Pi would do so well is because we already have a built-in numerology, right? So, like, you can make those mystical statements like, I am the 3 and the 1 4.
Or if you want to get more specific, you could go further down the list of numbers.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Anyways, on to chapter 12. Chapter 12 looks like another parable. So you know what? Just as soon as
it seems most of Jesus' parables make one main point. This one's rather complex, and the details fit the social situation in Jewish Galilee in the first century. Large estates owned by absentee landlords were put in the hands of local peasants who cultivated the land as tenant farmers. The parable exposed the planned attempt on Jesus' life and God's judgment on the planners. So,
it seems like Landon has returned, and I don't know. He was away. He wasn't here earlier. Must have been prophecy.
Yep.
Well, I mean, in being also co-taken to heaven, it was revealed to me that there was actually a scheduling error regarding the fig trees. And they got actually mad at fig trees. It was just you woke up on the wrong side of the Sabbath and was kind of ticked off and grumpy and feels bad about that.
That makes perfect sense. Also, plus, thank you
for the donation to the Church of Piety.
Oh, I like how you use pie there.
Excellent with a pie there. Well done.
Yeah, I was just saying that with our new church, we already have a numerology baked into it.
Baked into it.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I have a T-shirt which says my pin is the last 4 digits of pi. And the answer to that is, of course, in base pi, the last 4 digits are zeros.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, the problem, of course, is if you're trying to do things that are not multiples of pi, there's some issue. But anyway, we digress. I believe we're at chapter 12.
Yes, we are.
Yeah,
and you're on the go there.
Considering Anu points out something that I want to check into here. So considering says that Deuteronomy 14, 24 through 45 show that it was normal to buy and sell at the temple, and that Jesus is disrupting the normal temple functions. So I want to see here Deuteronomy 14. Starting.
All right, well, since that's kind of like a longer section, while you look into that, Landon, I think it's your turn for chapter 12.
Okay, so chapter 12, and he began to speak to them in parables, because you can't actually speak plainly; you got to be round about it. Sorry, that was my commentary, right? And he began to speak to them in parables.
Oh, hold on.
Man.
I've found the part, right? So it says here, but they were talking about traveling and, the animals and everything. It says, but if that place is too distant and you have been blessed by the Lord your God and cannot carry your tithe, because the place where the Lord will choose to put his name is so far away, then exchange your tithe for silver and take the silver with you and go to the place the Lord your God will choose. Use the silver to buy whatever you like, cattle, sheep, wine, or other fermented drink, or anything you wish. Then you and your household shall eat there in the presence of the Lord your God and rejoice. So basically,
this is specifically for temple stuff. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, specifically for temple stuff. Yeah, you could exchange money for all these things and bring your tithes, right? It's not unheard of.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and he began to speak to them in parables. A man planted a vineyard and put a wall around it and dug a vat under the winepress and built a tower and rented it out to the vine growers and went on a journey. And at harvest time, he sent a slave to the vine growers in order to receive some of the produce that the vineyard, of the vineyard from the vine growers. And they took him and beat him and sent him away empty-handed. Now, I guess we're at verse 3. I guess I will point out
that's just really rude of them.
He rented it out, but I guess they're implied there's a contract, right? This is not like a landlord has renting out an apartment and expects you to provide food for him every time the landlord comes by to stop in your kitchen, right? I presume there's some kind of implied contract here, or is it the case that this is a common thing that if you rent out a vineyard, part of the rent is paid in produce? What do you think?
I am unsure, but it is just very rude of them to just beat up this guy who was just sent there by somebody else.
If what's happening is that this person produces builds this wine press and vineyards and rents it out. Is it that the rent covers the entire thing, or was there implied contract that they get some of the stuff? If he's like the landlord collecting the rent, and they beat the landlord's representative to collect the rent, that's not a very good thing. If the landlord just expects to get some stuff, from the produce from the vineyard, that's. I'm just asking if there's any commentary regarding this stuff.
So, metaphorically, this would be probably like Judah, right? So a new element in the Markan narrative in comparison with the Song of Isaiah is the leasing of the vineyard to vine dressers and the departure of the owner. The motif of the owner or king leasing a field or, vineyard, orchard, whatever, to tenants occurs in rabbinic parallels in light of the statement that Jesus spoke the parable to them, that is, to the chief priests and the scribes and the elders, and the remark in verse 12 that they knew that he had told this parable against them. It is apparent that the tenants represent those leaders of the people to whom God has entrusted God's vineyard. But apparently this is a common kind of a motif.
There's, from the bits of the Talmud that I've read, right, there's one section that I know of that talks about who rightfully owns the produce of a field, right? And they talk about like the ownership of the land itself, giving ownership of the things that grow on the land to the one who owns the land, right? So there may be something like that which comes into play here, but otherwise I'm not sure.
Oh, anyway, so verse 4. And again, he sent another slave, and they wounded him in the head and treated him shamefully. Now, one wonders what shamefully means. If they banged his head around and did other things to him.
I suppose, yeah, or they just like made fun of him, I guess.
I will, by the way, point out that the use of slavery here has been used as justification in the for slavery in certain historical sections, saying, see, there was the Bible talked about it didn't condemn the person for having slaves. They condemned the people for being abusive, right?
Yeah, actually, slave owners are praised many times in the New Testament.
They are, I don't know if praised, but they are definitely compared to God with his power, right, that he holds over everybody.
Yeah. And he sent another, and that one they killed. So with many others, beating some, killing others, right? Now, I will point out, if you're a slave and your owner says, hey, go and collect stuff, you might say, could I take some police along with me or something like that? But apparently this owner wasn't too concerned about what was going on with slaves. I mean, the first time it happened, he should have sent people with more oomph.
Yeah.
But to keep sending slaves and having them being killed and keep going, it's kind of a douche move on the owner.
Yeah, like eventually you should catch on to a pattern and be like, okay, maybe I should stop sending people over there.
Yeah.
Well, douche means it's a bad thing, right? So anyway, so he says, and he had one more to send, of his beloved son, and he sent him last of all, saying, they will respect my son. But the vinegrowers said to one another, this is the heir. Come, let's kill him, and the inheritance will be ours.
So Jewish law provided that a piece of property unclaimed by an heir would be declared ownerless and then could be claimed by anyone. The tenants assumed that the son came as heir to the claim of his property, and that if he were slain, they could claim the land.
Yeah. But little did they know that's not what he was there for.
Oh, snap.
So verse 8 says, and they took him and killed him and threw him out of the vineyard. And that's kind of he's dead, and now you just like toss him out as garbage. What a really terrible mood. Of course, I come back to the owner who thinks that somehow the owner has implied produce being paid for the vineyard, and then starts having slaves, and then keeps sending the slaves. They get killed, and he keeps doing it. Anyway, but verse 9. Okay, this is the parable, so I guess it's okay. Maybe. No, it isn't. What will the owner of the vineyard do? Spoiler alert. It's probably not what you think. He will come and destroy the vine growers and give the vineyards to others.
Yeah, like you don't mess with the landlord.
Yeah, so the parable, more about judgment and less about the kingdom of God than the other parables, builds upon the allegory found in Isaiah 5, 1-7. But in Mark, the tenants are Israel's leaders, and the servants are God's prophets, and the heir is Jesus.
Yeah.
In Isaiah, the vineyard is condemned for not producing edible grapes. Idolatry and injustice are compared to wild grapes, and its destruction is predicted. Some Christian traditions see Jesus' parable as announcing the replacement of Judaism by the church, but the parable can also be understood as Jesus' condemnation of Jewish officials in collusion with Rome.
Yeah, I say, and there's all kinds of other things that people read in the text. I come back and look and saying, okay, so what does the vineyard do? Well, he destroys the vine growers and gives the vineyard to someone else, right? So why didn't that happen the first time they beat up a slave and injured a slave? Why keep sending people to die and be horribly mutilated in his son? I realize that it's a so-called foreshadowing thing, but it also sort of says that the owner of the vineyard kind of did some dumb things. They should have realized, okay, so maybe the second time it happens, it seems like, okay, this wasn't just a person being robbed, but this is a pattern here, so I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah.
Wait until they're killing people and sending multiple people to be killed. Bad that they were being killed. Bad that this owner wasn't like getting into their thick skull. What was going on? Mm-hmm. All right. So verse 10. Have you not even read this scripture? The stone which the builders rejected, this became the chief cornerstone. This came from the Lord. And is it marvelous in our eyes?
This comes from Psalm 118. 118.
This is playing right into that rock research I'm doing independently right now.
Yeah, big rock research.
Big rock research, yeah. I'm trying to find the name for these big rocks other than the cornerstone.
Okay, so you got the People's Champion.
What?
The Great One.
What? Where are you getting this from?
The Rock.
Ah, no, not him. Damn it.
So it depends on the rocks in terms of the context. For example, if you're into engineering of a stone artifice, sometimes a keystone is used for certain types, for example, art structures. But of course, that changes over time.
Right. That would hold an arch in place.
Yes. So it depends upon the purpose of the rock, right? Sometimes they're decorative, sometimes they're foundational, like foundation stone, cornerstone. It kind of depends. Okay. So again, Jesus has put out this parable about this owner and the terrible people renting, and then the owner not understanding what's happening and so forth, and then enter this thing. So, verse 12. And they were seeking to seize him, and yet they feared the multitude, for they understood that he had spoken the parable against them. And they left him and went away. So the plot thickens. Verse 13, and this is a entire paragraph that I underline in my Bible. And they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians to him in order to trap him in a statement. And they came and said to him, "Teacher, we know you are truthful and defer to no one, for you are not partial to any, but teach the way of God in truth. Is it lawful to pay a poll tax to Caesar or not?"
So they're trying to elicit a dangerous pronouncement. The background for this passage may be the events of 6 to 7 CE, when a prophetic leader named Judas, mentioned in Acts 5:37, organized a movement to worship God alone and refused to pay the tax to Caesar. This is referred to in Josephus's Jewish Wars.
Yeah. So when Archelaus, a son of Herod the Great, was deposed from his office as ethnarch of Judea, Samaria, and Idumea in 6 CE, these territories became the Roman imperial province of Judea. The new province had its own governor called a prefect of equestrian rank. This prefect was only to some extent subordinate to the imperial legate who governed the province of Syria. The first prefect of Judea was Coponius. At the time of his appointment, Quirinius became the new legate to Syria. Quirinius was charged with the task of taking a census of the population of the newly acquired territory for the purpose of levying taxes according to Roman usage. At this time, 6 or 7 CE, Judas, a Galilean or a native of Gamala in Galantis, now the Golan, called upon his countrymen to refuse to pay tax to the Romans and to recognize only God as their ruler. Josephus does describe him. In Antiquities of the Jews, Josephus says that Judas allied himself with Sadduc, a Pharisee, in calling for refusal to pay taxes and inciting a rebellion for the purpose of achieving independence.
So, see, even then they had sovereign citizens and people like that, and at that time. But
yeah,
anyway,
I believe that we covered before at a certain point that there was some kind of statement in the coinage used in the taxes, which admitted to like the divinity of the Roman emperor.
Sure.
So that would be a form of idolatry.
Yeah, and of course we won't talk about what's on American currencies and that sort of thing, but that's a different story. So, excuse me. So they just said this little trappy thing. Although to me, it's not very clever, right? Because it's kind of obvious what the trap is. Right. And they just had an example where Jesus said, "I'll answer this if you answer that," right? So what makes you think the new group is going to get any better answer? But they're trying anyway. So let's see in this underlined paragraph what they say. So they say, verse 15, "Shall we pay or shall we not pay?" But he, knowing their hypocrisy, said to them, "Why are you testing me? Bring me a denarius to look at." And they brought him one. And he said to them, "Whose likeness and inscription is this?" Where's the point of the coin? And they said to him, "Caesar's." And Jesus said to them, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God."
But since, there's that commandment against making any kind of physical representation of God.
Yeah. Oh, right.
You don't give anything to God.
Well,
the verse ends, by the way, and they were amazed at him.
Well, the thing is, you would give to God, but like the things that you would give to God are not like coins with God on them, where it says, "In God I trust because I'm God," or some shit like that. Like you wouldn't give that kind of stuff because God would have no need for that.
Right.
But you'd probably, offer like sacrifices and stuff.
Now, my Bible puts a note on that final phrase were there, and they were amazed at him. It says that the alternate translation would be "were greatly marveling," right? So it's suggesting that after he did this, "Render Caesar Caesar, things of God to gods," and they were it sort of implied that they were amazed at a clever answer.
So here,
as opposed to awe-inspiring that this person must be godly. So what do you think?
Yeah, here's an interesting note from Tertullian. He interprets the passage to mean that you give money to Caesar since his image is on the coins, but you give yourself to God since you bear God's image. In the context, the implication is that Christians should not worship any being but God. In another work, he implies that some have used this passage to argue that it is permissible for Christians to avoid martyrdom by bribery. He rejects this interpretation since bribery is not giving to Caesar what belongs to him. In any case, in such a situation, giving to God what belongs to God involves laying down one's life as Christ laid down his for humanity. It is not clear whether the concluding comment, "and they marveled greatly at him," applies to the interlocutors, to the crowd, or to both. Yeah, because sometimes the word that's used there, it's never really clear. It's just referring, it usually refers, if it says auton, it would refer to anything back in the sentence or in the passage.
Well, if you also consider the historical context that Josephus referred to, right? Maybe they really were like amazed by the cleverness of the response, because it would be something where people have been arguing about this for a while.
Right.
And maybe they had never heard that before. And it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's also something with, there's also again a passage for those that sort of claim to be like sovereign citizens or certain types of Israelites or so forth. That this is a fairly abused passage for the purpose of people having agendas. So be that as it may.
And of course, this
18.
means that when you pay your taxes, you should go bury your $1 bills in George Washington's grave.
That's a great idea.
Sure.
Yeah.
And some of the Sadducees, open parentheses, who say there is no resurrection, close parentheses, came to him and began to question him, saying, so before we go on, I'm curious about this thing that my Bible has this parenthetical comment trying to decide about the Sadducees, saying there's no resurrection. What's the deal with that?
Sadducees, Jewish party that represented the wealthy and sophisticated classes. They were located largely in Jerusalem and made the temple and its administration their primary interest. Though they were small in number, in Jesus' time they exerted powerful political and religious influence. There's a note, they say there's no resurrection. They deny resurrection, accepted only the 5 books of Moses as authoritative, and flatly rejected the oral tradition. These beliefs set them against the Pharisees and common Jewish piety.
Are there modern Sadducees in
No.
Judaism?
No, the only sect that really survived was the Pharisees. But, I mean, there are, like, you can look at Reform Judaism as maybe a little bit of an offshoot of this. As in Reform synagogues, they don't really talk about the Talmud that much, and they make a big deal about the Torah, but not about, like, the prophets or... They also don't engage in any statements about the Messianic age in Reform Judaism. In fact, they edit the morning prayers, which go back for who knows how long, in order to remove any statements about the Messianic age. So,
wow.
Wow. Well, so again, and I assume also the Sadducees would probably be a group of people that would not be pleased at Jesus's, public stunts regarding temple stuff and that sort of thing.
Definitely not.
Probably hit them harder in terms of their power base than perhaps even the Pharisees. Okay, verse 19. So these are the Sadducees. Teacher, Moses wrote to us a law that if a man's brother dies and leaves behind a wife and leaves no child, his brother should take up the wife and raise up the offspring to his brother. Okay, that's what it says. Okay. And I presume, by the way, that they are, this is verse 19, they are quoting Deuteronomy 25, verse 5. Saying, hey, Jesus, Deuteronomy 25, verse 5. Well, they wouldn't have called it Deuteronomy 25, verse 5, but that is me. Okay. So I said, they were 7 brothers, and the first one took a wife and died, leaving no offspring. And the second one took her and died, leaving behind no offspring. And likewise, a third. And so all 7 left no offspring. Last, the woman died too. In the resurrection, and they probably put it, I imagine they put air quotes, in the resurrection, because these are people who...
Right.
In the resurrection, when they rise again, which wife will she be? For all 7 had her as wife. So what do you think Jesus does with this little logic trap thing, right? And Jesus said to them, is this not the reason you are mistaken, that you do not understand the scriptures or the power of God? For when they rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given to marriage, but are like angels in heaven. But regarding the fact that the dead rise again, have you not read in the book of Moses, in the passage about the burning bush, how God spoke to him saying, I am God of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob, the God of Jacob. Is he not the God of the dead, but the living? You are greatly mistaken. So
his argument, it doesn't hinge on predictions of resurrection, but rather on evidence from Scripture about the living presence of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And on being like angels, it describes beliefs similar to those found in the contemporary Jewish apocalyptic text.
Yeah, I would say
you can see like Second Baruch.
Yeah, I would say that at this time they would expect, if they're looking for this new heaven, new earth kind of thing, it would be where people are living like angels. At least the righteous.
And the extension of that is when you go to heaven, you get wings and
and you get 1,000 eyes and
you get set on fire.
Yeah.
So I would also, when you get around to exploring the books of Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Joseph Smith stuff. It'll be interesting to see how they rationalize, and I'm sure they got apologies up the wazoo about having this sort of eternal marriage stuff that they do, married in a temple forever, blah, blah, blah things, versus this one we're saying that they neither marry nor are given to marriage, or like angels in heaven. So it's kind of interesting to see with stuff there.
Well, if I remember correctly, for the Mormons, it's like, when you die, if you're super righteous, you become the god of your own planet
or something.
Yeah.
I've heard that as well.
Let me see the Book of Mormon.
Okay.
So as I say, that's my foreshadowing is that I look forward to you going over some of those stuff for that Joseph Smith guy, because boy, did he write some doozies.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Even your Friday Apocryphal podcast, which people should listen to, is getting in some stuff. I don't think you scratched the surface when it comes to that Smith guy. Anyway,
Apocalypse of Adam right now. Make sure to catch it on Friday.
Also, when it comes to the Mormons, there's the Book of Mormon, there's the Doctrine and Covenants, and there's the Pearl of Great Price. Now, we're going to have to eventually get a triple Bible.
Sure, yeah.
And that will probably contain the Doctrines and Covenants and the Pearl of Great Price. It contains things like the Articles of Faith for Mormonism, history of Joseph Smith.
I'd love to hear that one.
Yeah, but more interesting, I think, would be the extended things from some other traditions, like the Catechism with the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and I understand that some people have, as some have said, some people have jobs on Friday, but fortunately, if you subscribe to the podcast, you'll be notified and you can watch it later. So anyway, back to Nuff Shilling, back to where is he? Where are we? We are in verse. I'm sorry, I lost.
You just completed verse 27.
That is correct. That's correct. So we're on to a new paragraph, which is a part of which I've underlined in my Bible as a kid. Verse 28. And then one of the scribes came and heard them arguing, and recognizing he had answered them well, asked him, "What commandment is the foremost of all?" And Jesus answered, "The foremost of all is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God, and you shall love your Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and with all your mind, with all your strength." And the second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these.
Yeah, so this is very important in Judaism. The first quotation came to be known as the Shema, named after the first word of Deuteronomy 6:4 in Hebrew, which means hear. The Shema became the Jewish confession of faith, which was recited by pious Jews every morning and evening. To this day, it begins every synagogue service.
Good to know.
That's pretty nice. And so and I take it this one here, this scribe, I don't think that this scribe was necessarily, it doesn't imply this person was trying to trap him like the other sniveling little folks, right?
It doesn't really seem like it.
It seems like this person was sort of genuinely amazed at the cleverness or the insightfulness of the answers. And so they were probably genuinely curious to say, what is he going to say about this, right? And so this is the answer, right? Okay, so verse 32. Now we're in the non-underlined passage of my Bible. And a scribe said to him, right, teacher, you have truly stated that he is one and there is no other besides him, and to love him with all his heart, with all his understanding, and all their strength, and to love his neighbor as himself. This is much more than all the burnt offerings and sacrifices. And Jesus saw that he had answered intelligently. He said to him, you are not far from the kingdom of God. And after that, no one would venture to ask him any more questions.
Oh, yeah, he got him.
Right? That's the mic drop thing. And Jesus, answering, began to say, as he taught in the temple, how is it that the scribes say that Christ is the son of David? David himself said in the Holy Spirit, the Lord said to my Lord, sit on my right hand until I put thine enemies beneath thy feet. David himself calls him Lord. And so, in what sense is he his son?
Yeah.
And the crowd generally enjoyed listening to him.
I like how they add that in. But so God says to David's Lord, i.e. David's superior, ultimately the Messiah. The purpose of the quotation was to show that the Messiah was more than a descendant of David. He is David's Lord. Interjected here is a scriptural argument to the effect that the Messiah is not just the son of David, i.e. a king of the Davidic line, but something greater. Elsewhere, Mark affirms Jesus' connections with David. So Psalm 110 opens, of David, a psalm. The Lord says to my Lord, the Messiah, not David. The argument assumes that David, the purported speaker of Psalm 110:1, called the Messiah my Lord, indicating that the Messiah was David's superior. But when we covered that, it was pretty clear that it was actually self-referential.
Yeah.
He was saying of himself, my Lord, because he's a king. Kingly line. So it was actually just narcissism the whole time.
Aw, man.
Who would have guessed?
Yeah, people are going to confuse this off. All right. So so moving on to verse 41, and here again I have underlined to the end of the chapter. Verse 41. And he sat down opposite the treasury and began observing how the multitude were putting money into the treasury, and how many rich people were putting in large sums. And a poor widow came and put 2 copper coins, which amount to 1 cent. Right, cent. And here my thing says, they said, the small copper coins, lepta, and literally quadranus, 1/64 of a denarius.
Okay.
So what is yours talk about in terms of the translation of small copper coins that amount to 1 cent?
The poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a fraction of a penny. Another one says 2 small copper coins which are worth a penny. Another one says 2 mites which make a farthing.
Oh my.
What?
Of course, at the time of writing, they wouldn't be referring to pennies.
Well, yeah, obviously not actual pennies.
So,
Farthings even.
what does the Greek actually say?
Hold on. What verse is this?
This is from verse 42 of chapter
42.
12.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. I was somewhere else entirely. Yeah. And a poor widow came and put in 2 lepta, which make a quadrans. Yeah. So on that verse, I was somewhere else entirely. I was like, what? So after many rich people put a lot of money into the treasury or collection box, a poor widow comes along and puts in 2 lepta. So yeah, the phrase lepta duo, that's 2 small coins, is short for lepta duo nomismata. Nomismata. That means 2 small coins. So it's just short for that. The copper lepton was the smallest Greek coin denomination. The denomination lepton occurs in the papyri from Nahal Hever. The documents also mention a Nabatean coin denomination called the Melena, which was a silver coin. One such coin was worth more than 58 lepta. A Melena was worth less than a denarius. The name lepton, small coin, was used for whatever was the smallest denomination of coin in the Syrian Nabatean region under Herod the Great, and after 60 E, the smallest coin minted in Judea was the peruta. Since it was the smallest coin in circulation, it could be called a lepton. Okay. Mark defines 2 lepta as equivalent to a quadrans. The quadrans was the smallest denomination of Roman coins.
So I don't know why they didn't say 2 small coins which amount to 1 quadrant.
Yeah,
that would make sense. Translate it to cent, because cent is a
modern thing. Yeah,
but in the King James, the authentic King James.
Yes, it refers to.
What word do they use?
Farthing.
2 mites, which make a farthing.
Yeah, mites. Okay. What a fun word.
Yeah. Okay. So, verse 43. And calling his disciples to him, he said to them, truly I say to you, this widow put in more than all the contributors to the treasury. For they put in out of the surplus, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she owed and all she had to live on.
Yeah, so she gave up the most, even though it wasn't the most money.
Although I guess if people were following in the various traditions, she should have been provided for, but apparently
no.
The folks weren't doing their job. So, thus end of that lesson.
Yes. And with that, we move into the final chapter of the day, chapter 13. If you're enjoying the stream so far, share it with your friends, the rich and the poor.
Believe.
Also, yes, like button.
It's like button and bell.
Yeah, the bell. That's right. Always forget about the bell.
Ding!
Subscribe, bell, like, tell your landlord, your tax collector, and your local Pharisee and Sadducee and scribe.
There you go. Landon knows.
Yep. And join the International Church of Pi. T.
Yeah.
Okay, so chapter 13. And as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples saith unto him, Master, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here. And Jesus answering said unto him, Seest thou these great buildings? There shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives over against the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign when all these things shall be fulfilled? We're getting into it here. All right. And Jesus answering them began to say, Take heed, lest any man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And when ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be ye not troubled, for such things must needs be. But the end shall not be yet. So, all those wars have to happen. Of course.
Determinism.
They must, yeah. So we did talk about this section when we started Mark, I think, or maybe almost definitely when we started Matthew.
Yeah.
About the destruction of the temple, or I should say the
there's
prophecy
still a wall there.
Right. Yeah.
Still has its bricks.
So
Jesus was wrong.
So yeah, it leaves two situations. So either this would have been written afterwards, or Jesus was wrong. Yeah, those are the things.
It can be both.
Well,
Also, yes.
Maybe they rebuilt that part of the wall just for then got stopped, right?
Oh,
yes, absolutely.
I mean, the apologetics you can do is amazing here, but I think as well this notion of of course there's also things to say. Well, this is he's speaking in allegory. Whenever the facts don't fit, you just say, well, it's a parable, it's an allegory. It was not meant to be taken literally when it's convenient.
Yeah, but considering the actual destruction of the temple, I would not say this is an allegory by any means.
Right. So, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be earthquakes in diverse places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows, but take heed to yourselves, for they shall deliver you up to councils, and in the synagogues ye shall be beaten, and ye shall be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them. And all the gospel must first be published among all nations. But when they shall lead you and deliver you up, take no thought beforehand what ye shall speak, neither do ye premeditate. But whatsoever shall be given you in that hour, that speak ye. For it is not ye that speak, but the Holy Ghost. Now, the brother shall betray the brother to death, and the father the son, and children shall rise up against their parents, and shall cause them to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. But when ye shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand. Then let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains. And let him that is on the housetop not go down into the house, neither enter therein to take anything out of his house. And let him that is in the field not turn his back again for to take up his garment. But woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. And pray ye that your flight be not in the winter. For in those days shall be affliction, such as was not from the beginning of the creation which God created unto this time, neither shall be. And except that the Lord has shortened those days, no flesh should be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he hath chosen, he hath shortened the days. And then, if any man shall say to you, Lo, here is Christ, or Lo, he is there, believe him not, for false Christs and false prophets shall rise, and shall show signs and wonders to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. But take ye heed. Behold!
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 I have foretold you all these things. But in those days after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And then shall he send his angels, and shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost part of the earth to the uttermost part of heaven. Now,
so before we get into the rest of it here, I do, because it looks like we're going back to a fig tree. So before we get into that here, so the hypothesis that the desolating sacrilege, or the abomination of desolation,
I love that thing.
Yeah, is a statue of a deity fits the remark that it was, quote, where it should be or where it should not be, better than the theory that it reflects the zealous occupation of the temple. Such a statue was tolerable in a sanctuary dedicated to the relevant deity, but not in the Temple of Jerusalem. Further, the modifier standing fits a statue better than a political or military leader. Finally, Marcus dates Mark to a time shortly after the destruction of the temple in 70 CE. What relevance would a command to flee from Judea have at that time? This problem is especially acute if the aside to the reader in verse 14 was composed by Mark, as has been argued here and elsewhere. This aside implies that the abomination and the command to flee were of immediate relevance to the audience at the time of writing. The hypothesis that the sacrilege refers to a statue is supported by one well-attested usage of the term, and yes, here's the term that's used for sacrilege. Deleguma, delugma. There you go, delugma. In the Septuagint, namely to designate the image of a foreign god. Especially significant for verse 14 is the fact that the term may refer both to the image and to the deity that it represents. Thus, the shift from the neuter noun sacrilege to the masculine participle hestekos, standing, may be explained in terms of this equivalence. The masculine participle would thus refer to the divinized emperor or to the deity he claimed to be or to represent. Another possibility was suggested by Gunther Zunst. He argued that verse 14 alludes to Gaius Caligula's attempt to have his statue set up in the temple in Jerusalem. He concluded from this allusion that the whole gospel was written in 40 CE. I would not agree with that. Others who argue that verse 14 refers to Caligula's attempt have concluded that the source used by Mark in chapter 13 was written in 40 CE. Neither of the latter two hypotheses is compelling. The position taken here is that Mark was written in the late 60s CE and that Caligula's attempt on the temple was a widespread living memory at the time. In any case, Zundt's theory was that the masculine participle represents the statue of the king or emperor.
All right. Let me continue on to the fig tree then. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When her branches...
the fig trees again?
Yeah, we're getting back to fig trees.
Exactly.
When her branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is near. So ye in like manner, when ye shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, even at the doors. Verily, I say unto you that this generation shall not pass till all these things be done.
Well, I don't know if that necessarily worked out there. What verse was that exactly?
Well, that was verse 30.
That was verse 30. Okay, continue on through verse 31 then.
All right. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away.
All right, then.
Where will these words exist?
They're just gonna exist.
Platonic.
In the void.
They'll be Jesus's words on the face of the deep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. Very useful words.
Yep.
With nothing around. No one to hear them. Anyways, But that was the end of verse 31.
Yeah. So, all right, this, all the things that are coming to pass, right? So, these things happening of verse 29 corresponds to the sprouting of the fig tree and its putting forth leaves. The appearance of the Son of Man corresponds to the arrival of summer. It could be debated whether these things happening refers to all the events described in verses 5b through 25, or only to those in verses 24 and 25, which immediately precede the appearance of the Son of Man. It is likely that the phrase refers to all the events of verses 5 through 25, since it takes up the disciples' question in verse 4, which also uses the word tauta, these things, or this. Thus, the comparison is a kind of recapitulation of the speech up to that point. It is clear, however, that the response of Jesus does not correspond exactly to the questions of the disciples. As pointed out above, the first question asks when the destruction of the temple, predicted in verse 2, will take place. The second asks what the sign will be when the complex of eschatological events associated with the destruction of the temple is about to take place. In the part of speech that extends from verses 5 through 27, Jesus does not name one event as the sign, but rather a whole series of events. Although the occurrence alluded to in verse 14 is highlighted as particularly significant by the aside to the audience. Furthermore, the part of the comparison that makes the analogy puts the emphasis on the arrival of the Son of Man. He is near at the door. Rather than on the destruction of the temple. These discrepancies are not surprising and should not be used to distinguish sources from redaction or to infer the assertion of alleged opponents of Mark. Rather, they are normal in a rhetorical situation in which the authoritative teacher knows more than the disciples and answers their questions in a way intended to lead them closer to a full understanding of issues involved. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. But of that day and that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father. Take ye heed, watch, and pray, for ye know not when the time is. For the Son of Man is as a man taking a far journey, who left his house and gave authority to his servants, and to every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch.
Yeah, so this is just like in Matthew, where the point was like, just stay vigilant of this.
Yes.
Or these things.
Does all these sort of certain sort of people go and do this Bible numerology and say, I figured it out, right? From the Jehovah's Witnesses to people like Herod Camping and so forth, there's numerous people that think they're more clever.
Yeah, but see, even Jesus was like, you don't know. I don't know. Only God knows. And what, you think he's just going to hide it in the Bible? I don't think so.
Speaking of hiding things, this entire stream I have put in new commands.
Oh, really?
And they're very hidden. And there's a little mini game that people can play. Don't tell anyone. This is the only time I'm going to bring it up.
Oh, thank you, Ellis, for the Temple Fund.
Holy shit.
Hey, you know what? That's going to definitely go to
Temple wine.
To the piety.
Yes.
I think we
Temple
need
wine.
Piety as a t-shirt.
That would make sense.
That's
actually
such a good idea.
That is a very good idea.
For that, by the way.
Yep. Oh man, we could like.
I'm sure Landon would like that one.
That's like pie crust.
Yeah.
You know.
Sure. Yeah.
In the shape of a cross.
Yeah.
But upside down. Ooh, I don't know.
That's
like a
just
pie.
the shape of a sword.
Oh yeah, sword pie.
Yeah.
Fuck it, I can't make a good pun.
For we have come bearing a sword, etc.
I don't have any swords on me.
Again,
I had a lot of them.
Yes, Alice. Very much appreciated.
Yes. So that's the end of today's readings, gentlemen. What have you learned?
I got nothing.
I learned that that when I underlined things as a kid, I wasn't paying attention to what I was underlining, even if I was underlining it.
Wonderful. Well, I learned that
if you believe hard enough, anything can happen.
well, it's just because you didn't know about the secret.
Right.
And
I learned that you don't know about the secret.
Right.
Yeah. You need to know about that.
I've
in
heard
my bathroom.
Listen,
you want
I've
a
heard.
copy? My
No,
mom
why
read
would
it.
I have heard that philosophy before. I've heard people talk about it, but not as a reference to the secret. I've heard them just say like, "Well, you got to really want it, and it'll happen." But I've never heard it as a reference to.
That's like the whole core concept.
Yeah, and I hope folks learn as well that how some of these passages have turned into or been used to rationalize a lot of thoughts. We saw things about slavery. We saw things about monetary systems. We saw things about Judaism, about things relating to the church and property ownership and whatnot. These are texts that we've read that have been used to rationalize various behaviors throughout the ages. So there's something to be rationalized for everyone.
Yeah. With that being said,
We by the way, after first, we should show Patreon. Hey, you should become a patron. You could get T-shirts. We do a
like this one here,
just like that one. Look at that one.
yeah, actually we can pin that shirt.
We can.
The Be Held shirt.
Yeah. So you could win a T-shirt potentially. That's something you could do as a patron of $10 or more. You could,
or you could just click on that link and buy yourself a shirt.
That's something else you could do. And as a patron, you could be on the show, or you could join us in our patron hangouts, which, by the way, we are doing right when we are done with the show. So I'll be sending links to all the patrons that apply for that. That applies to, I should say. Mm-hmm. So there's that. We also have an Amazon wish list. We got a lot of books on there. You can add more
tons
books.
of books. Add books to the table. You see, you can't even see all the books on this table.
No.
Look, people, there are more books on this table than you can see. This table is longer.
Also a bookshelf filled with books that are maybe 4 times as many as on the table.
Right.
Maybe even more than 4 times. And beyond that, we have the Ahikar contest.
Right. Yeah. So if you like, you should first of all, you should go back and watch our reading of the Ahikar story, and then if you want, you can write in an ending to it, because an ending doesn't exist to it. It's been lost to time. So write a fan fiction for it. It'll be good.
Yeah, you can win a T-shirt.
But yeah. So Francesca Stavrakopoulos, I've tried to get her on multiple times. Has not gotten back to me. We would really love to have her on the show. That'd be fantastic. So I will try again. But that's all I can say is that I'll try.
Yeah, and I will also just mention today I actually found one of the hidden ones. So yay!
Yeah,
I feel satisfied now.
Well, eventually you might get the rest of them. I don't even know what they are because Chris just made them.
Yeah. So with that being said, Landon, show your stuff.
I am still working on international obfuscated C code contest. We're hoping to have a mock C contest to run through the procedures that we're developing, writing lots of code in GitHub to help people be able to submit and enter to the contest. We're hoping to have an actual real contest sometime this calendar year, so we're working on that. Continue to watch the James Webb Space Telescope. They just achieved optical alignment and precision for the higher frequency light around like in the orange red area. The scope has to still cool down before the longer wavelength optics aren't blinded by the heat of the telescope. But so far things are going quite well. So can you watch Space Telescope and And at some point, I'll get around to doing my favorite universe YouTube thing. But in the meantime, instead of subscribing to that, you can also subscribe to this channel because you'll get more content.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'll get content eventually, but I've got other things I've been working on. So.
Yeah, and beyond that, we have Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah, free to follow us on those platforms.
Yep. Email your Lawrence diss tracks to MilwaukeeAtheists@gmail.com.
Yep. And also
sacrifice the first fruits of the harvest to
us after you build a shrine.
Yeah,
to us.
after you build a shrine.
It's got to be like a good shrine, though.
No promises you'll get anything in return for that.
Right.
Also, it won't really benefit us, but hey, you do you, buckaroo. So beyond that, we're gonna see you on
Friday for the Apocalypse of Adam.
Yeah.
More Gnostic stuff.
Yeah.